Hello and welcome to the Bald and Bloviating podcast. I'm your bald bloviator, Mookie Spitz. And here's another installment of my weekly Bloviation. In the spirit, if not with the talent of Bill Burr, I am turning on the mic and moving the muscles in my face. Zero prep. Let's see what comes out. The point here is to exercise. Practice makes imperfect. No gain, all pain, especially for you, dear listener. Anyway, the first thing that pops to mind is the Jimmy Kimmel First Amendment controversy that's been swirling since Jimmy Kimmel went on last Monday. I believe I'm recording this on Monday, September 22nd. Jimmy Kimmel went on the air, and I paraphrase, he intimated that the MAGA folks are taking advantage of the Charlie Kirk assassination. They failed to admit that the killer is actually one of their own. And then in a segment that didn't get that much attention, he cross-cut to Trump being interviewed, I think on the lawn of the White House. And without missing a beat, he responds to the Charlie Kirk assassination by immediately segueing into some kind of construction project, demonstrating his very Trumpy habit, if you will, of being callous, unempathetic, and essentially an asshole. But so what else is new? It infuriated everyone on the right, and frankly, not hard to read between the teleprompter lines. This was an excuse to get Kimmel off the air. Trump himself has intimated that after Colbert got canceled, after the network had already paid Trump $16 million for ostensibly editing Kamala's interview. This is the birther guy here suing a network for editing an interview. Anyway, ABC bowed to the Trump then, bowed again. And with some jawboning from the FCC commissioner, Brendan Carr, ABC and Disney pulled Kimmel indefinitely. Apparently there was pressure from Nexstar Sinclair, the broader network, distributing the program across the country. Nexstar Sinclair, they're looking at a merger, which needs to be approved by said Brendan Carr. Round and round it goes. The latest piece of news as of today is that the indefinite suspension is now apparently definitely unsuspended, and we're going to get Jimmy Kimmel coming back on the air tomorrow. Will he apologize? Won't he? Will it be funny? Probably. Comics are best when they're painted against the wall, ideally through their own jokes, ill-timed jokes, and no doubt no dull moments to be had there. This all said, First Amendment conflicts, the rise of the authoritarian state notwithstanding, the question that's being begged is the future of broadcast media. If you've been tracking digital technology and communication, over the last 10, 20 years, it's been media fragmentation. The whole idea that you just blast the entire country with programming is so antiquated at this point, and no one seems to be talking about it. Probably because the business model remains viable from an advertising point of view, but old habits are hard to break. And we're on the cusp of the AI revolution. And if we've learned anything at all, then the one big benefit of AI, apparent already, is aligning particular types of content, however nuanced, however polarized or focused, with the however nuanced and polarized and focused recipient. In other words, this whole idea of broadcast media where a bunch of flyover red states have to endure ostensibly liberal, anti-Trump programming, you just kind of shrug in 2025 and say, why? Why? Why can't we just get the right content to the right people? And by right, I mean the audiences that are aligned with the content that they prefer. Now, as far as comedy goes, Gutfeld is one of the few exceptions for right-leaning comics, although some might call him a libertarian. But whatever. You've got Gutfeld on one side, and then you've got Colbert, Jimmy Kimmel, Jimmy Fallon, Seth Meyers. The list goes on and on and on. Four folks doing comedy, panning and slamming Donald Trump. So when Trump gets on and he bloviates, as only Trump can bloviate, that 97% of comic time on media is anti-Trump, that might be an exaggeration, but come on, most late night comedy slams Trump in a disproportionate way. Obama never got that treatment. Trump gets a lot of it. Now, do I think that it's not deserved? Sure it is. But that's not my point. My point is that bias does exist. And my other point is that this ostensibly biased programming gets blasted indiscriminately into tens of millions of households who are pro-Trump. So you're going to get a backlash. Should it be a backlash that is unconstitutional, that results in governmental overreach, that has created this clusterfuck of a disaster? No. But again, I am merely pointing out that the technology is there and the shift is long overdue to dynamic programming fit for the recipient. And that's just still not the case, which to me is still astounding that Jimmy Fallon and Jimmy Kimmel and Stephen Colbert and Seth Meyers and et cetera, Jon Stewart, still get blasted to all these households who ostensibly think that they suck. You can't keep making people do what they don't want to do or see what they don't want to see. And now nobody's putting a gun to the head of these people to watch these fucking shows. But again, the old business model is crumbling, at least from a technological point of view. But the monetization is still there to the point that we get this crisis. And now I'm going to segue in a weird way to our health system. RFK Jr. is going nuts with this anti-vax autism bullshit. Now, does he have a point here or there? Sure, he's right about our food being poison and our whole health system being crazy. He's also right about the CDC and the NIH making a ton of mistakes. Look at the peanut allergy problem. Look at COVID, how that was handled. Rather than demarcating, talking about segmentation here and dynamic audiences, why did we lock down all of society when there clearly was a distribution of risk, high to low? Kids, statistically, were immune to the coronavirus, likely because they were in sweltering petri dishes in classrooms loaded with coronavirus, or a variant thereof, and didn't succumb to it. And then you had elderly folks who did, and then frankly, you had high BMI people who succumbed to it. Now, were there exceptions? Of course. I personally knew. My girlfriend at the time in New York had a friend. She was 32 years old, athletic build, no apparent risk factors, none that were overt. She got the Rona on a Monday. She was hospitalized by Tuesday, and she was dead by Wednesday. We knew this person. It happened. But again, you need to match benefit with risk And you needed to look at this from a societal level rather than using the one and only metric of reducing serious illness and death, period. This was a cataclysmic mistake on the part of the government. Hand in hand with the vaccine mandates, obviously hindsight's 2020. And retrospectively, everything always makes sense, even and especially when you're in the midst of chaos and in the moment, you have no idea what's going on. But I think the government should have known better, and the government should have messaged better. There were adverse events related to the vaccines. I'm not anti-vax. Pulling $500 million of funding from the mRNA research at the NIH is idiotic. The mRNA vaccine coaxes one's own body to manufacture certain proteins. That's what it does. And since certain proteins are on the shell or the surface of certain cancers, we're shooting ourselves in the foot for potential cancer vaccines, you morons. It's all so stupid. But you get a conspiratorial maniac like RFK empowered by shoving vaccine mandates down everyone's throat, ostensibly, again, to reduce serious illness and fatalities. But what resulted was a whiplash effect. People don't like being told what to do. Do you see what I did here? People don't like to get programming they don't want to get. And people don't want to be told that they're going to have to needle themselves if they're uncomfortable with it. And you know what? Tough shit. If somebody didn't want to get the vaccine, then they didn't get the vaccine. And chances are, if you simply would have made it optional, like, hey, here's the data. Don't die. Get the vaccine. Yes, there might have been more collateral damage with the vaccine being more, or the virus being more prevalent. You can do the math on this stuff. But would that be outweighed by the societal damage of shutting everything down and shutting everybody up? I bring it up because we're doing the same thing with programming, and we're doing the same thing with, through the looking glass, the Trump administration now shoving their own mandates down everyone's throat. But this whataboutism and this two-sidedness between parties, there's validity to it, at least in the form of perception that's validated by lived experience. The Biden administration did jawbone Facebook to take down posts, which in retrospect was absurd. That the origin of the coronavirus could have been in a lab. You can't say that. The fuck out of here, you can't say that. You should go up there and say whatever the hell you want, let alone something that proves to be likely true. This is infuriating. And we keep doing it. Both sides keep doing it. Now, was the Biden administration as heavy-handed and overt and as comprehensive and as overtly mendacious and manipulative and overstepping as the Trump administration? No, but Trump's MO is always loading his own weapon with the intransigence and mistakes of his enemies. If Biden fucked up a little bit, then Trump capitalizes on it to trample the Constitution in any way he can with that ammo. And he does a brilliant marketing and communications job of it. And yeah, you could what about and two-sidedism all day long. And like most conspiracy theories, there's an element of truth to it. There's actually a lot of truth to it. So we both got to stop. We both got to stop telling Americans what to do and what to think and what to believe. And you could cite the precedent of civil rights in the South, going all the way back to the lunch counter, where they had to invoke federal trade laws to enable black people to sit with white people in the same fucking room. I get it. I get it. The federal government could have, should have, and finally did force an entire culture to accept the fact that black people have the same rights as white people. And they did a half-assed job of it. Look at the Jim Crow laws and look at the slow, if steady, progress. But progress has been made. But you can't look at that as precedent for a host of other issues and take a blanket stance on the government telling people how it's gonna be. There's gotta be a common sense element to this stuff. And this is what kills me about the courts, especially the Supreme Court. When they cite precedent from 1797 and base new laws or confirm or deny rights based on what the founders might have thought in a country that was 1,000th the size of what it is now from a couple centuries ago. And I think that has to do with the basis of really struggling to find the a priori, right? Like, what is truth? How can we mandate a law if the law is arbitrary? By definition, the law's got to be eternal, right? Because it's founded in what? In either foundational belief, which constituted the formation of the country, or some kind of essential logical precedent so that it doesn't keep vacillating on a whim. I get it. But what gets thrown out the window is just common sense and an acknowledgement of what could be constituted as societal good. In this case, according to this bloviator, just leave people the hell alone. Leave them alone. You bake a cake. You don't like gay people. Personally, I just think you're being an asshole. But it's your own business. You have the right not to serve anyone you don't want to. Just as the customer has the right to not buy your shitty cake. Okay, there might be no other bakeries around. Well, that's just tough shit. Instead of a birthday cake, have like a birthday pizza. It's not the end of the world, people. Take some personal accountability. Stop looking to the government for handouts. Stop looking to the government for help. Stop blaming everyone but yourself for your own bullshit. Do you feel violated? Do you feel that life is treating you unfairly? Well, welcome to the party, pal. When has it ever been different? And the price that we pay for this faux equalization is way higher than if you just have to drive an extra 10 miles for the birthday cake or be flexible and playful enough to get a birthday pizza because the bakers in your shitty little town are fucking assholes. That's it. I don't see it as any more complicated than that necessarily. And now that rant spontaneously makes me segue to this idea that people want the easy way out. They either want support from the government, they self-identify as victims, simply because they don't want to take personal responsibility. They don't want to fight the good fight. Now, the other day, I was watching Lex Friedman, the Spectrum-y interviewer, the Spectrum-y and implicitly smug and pretentious interviewer, chat with Terrence Tao. Now, chances are you don't know who that guy is. He's far from a household name. But if you're a math and science geek like I am, Terry Tao is arguably the foremost mathematician that we know about on planet Earth. He's a tenured professor at UCLA. His specialty is number theory, which is the hardest branch of mathematics, arguably. And he's an analytical thinker, which means that he's less adept at visualization and geometric proofs. And this guy is just an analytical engine. He's a child prodigy. He's one of those guys who had a briefcase and wore a suit when he was like 5 years old. I don't remember exactly, but he got his doctorate in his teens, that kind of thing. Transcendently brilliant, capital G genius. If you see other mathematicians, famous mathematicians, very, very successful mathematicians talk about Terry, they kind of have that little smirk. And that little smirk is they are so jelly of this guy because he's so smart. Terry Tao works on stuff like the twin prime conjecture, for example, which is proving that there's an infinite number of primes that are only separated from each other by a digit. For example, like 5 and 7. 6 is between them. There's only one digit between two primes. Now, 5 and 7, you're like, well, duh, they should be pretty frequent and therefore infinite. But think about it. If you have a number that's a Googleplex in size, which is 10 to the Google power, then the average distribution between primes is a Google. That's 10 with 100 zeros. The bigger the number, the more ways you can combine and recombine them into factors, into prime factors, and the more rare they are statistically. So you assume if it stretches out infinitely large, these numbers, then the distribution between primes gets so huge that happening to find two primes that are just literally right next to each other is not only unlikely, but it doesn't happen. So this is like the holy grail of number theory, to prove that there's an infinite number of twin primes that are right next to each other. This is one of many things that this guy's working on. And I'm just digressing because I'm a geek and I find it fascinating. And I believe they have proved it so far with this sieve method. With basically, there was another mathematician, unknown, who was working at a Subway. I'm not kidding. It's one of those stories. And he figured that you could apply existing methodology to narrow down the range between primes from what was originally about 2 million, I think. There's an infinite number of primes that are 2 million digits apart, at least. And they've narrowed it down to 16, I think. And they can't use the method any further than that. You're welcome. Anyway, Terry Tao was being interviewed by Lex. And they got to talking about this other mathematician named Grigory Perelman. He's a Russian guy. He's also eccentric, but see, Terry Tao is married. He's got kids. He is a tenured professor at UCLA, as I describe. And the guy has a life. And this is actually relevant to this story, so hang on. And Terry Tao wakes up in the morning, and there was a number file interview, and he said, what do you have for breakfast? And Terry Tao says he has a jam sandwich. Well, good for Terry. Anyway, Grigory Perelman, this Russian mathematician. Now, this guy literally lives with his mom, apparently. Doesn't get out much. There was a leaked video or two of somebody actually catching him at the store buying grapes or something and stalking him, following around. He's got a big beard and huge eyebrows, and he looks the part, wearing a trench coat and hat. And anyway, this guy, Grigory Perelman, figured out one of the Millennial Prizes, which is a list of 10 super difficult challenges in mathematics. And if you can prove it right or wrong, any of these, then you get $1 million and you're famous forever, because these are some big problems. One of the problems is the foundational Riemann hypothesis. And cracking that, they think, might lead to cracking prime numbers. And if you can crack prime numbers, then you might be able to crack the passwords of every computer on the planet, which is a terrific sci-fi theme, which other people have done and I might do. I digress again. Anyway, Grigory Perelman proved what's called the Poincaré conjecture, which is essentially saying that the simplest object that you can create in all dimensions is a sphere. Now that sounds obvious because, there's a central point and then the surface of the object is equidistant. But when you get into multiple dimensions, shit gets weird. And the mathematical community had an awfully hard time. They were able to do it in 4 dimensions, I believe. And for some reason, 3 dimensions was really hard. I don't know the exact details. It's one of the hardest things to prove. Suffice to say that using Ricci flows and a bunch of new techniques that he invented, Grigory Perelman, living with his mom, living in a basement in Moscow, proved it. He refused to accept the Millennial Prize because he's a weirdo. I mean, if you're living with your mom, accept the $1 million. Just give it to your mom, buddy. Anyway, reason I bring all this up is Lex is talking to Terry about the Poincaré conjecture and Grigory. And Terry says that, wow, it's very impressive. And then Lex asks him, well, what about the Riemann hypothesis? That's like the holy grail of math. That's like the big one. If you can prove or disprove Riemann, then that connects or disconnects whole branches of mathematics with each other. It's kind of like the centerpiece of mathematics as we know it today, the Riemann hypothesis. And then Terry said something interesting. Terry said that it takes total dedication to do something like that. It was similar with Andrew Weil and the proof of Fermat's last theorem. Xn plus Yn equals Zn. No n's exist larger than 3. He proved it. Andrew Wiles did. But it took him 8 years. And he literally devoted full concentration till his brains almost fell out of his ass. And then there was a mistake. And then the guy almost had a myocardial. And then they had to fix it. And it took him another year or year and a half to fix the mistake and to finally prove it. But total dedication. So that was Terry's response, which was like, we don't really have the tools right now in our arsenal to prove or disprove Riemann for that matter. And you need to do something like Grigory did. And then kind of Lex was hinting, well, Terry, you're the guy. If anyone can do it, you can. And then Terry said, no, I'm busy. And then I'm just kind of listening. Busy what, Terry? Eating jam sandwiches and Going to PTA meetings at UCLA? I mean, with a brain like yours. And then I'm thinking, well, I don't have that brain, but I locked myself in my apartment for like 2 months to finish my novel. And is it a bestseller? No. But I think it's great. And it's the novel I always wanted to write. And frankly, a big reason I didn't write it until now is because that's what you got to do. If you do anything in this life, you need total dedication. Like doing something big. You really, really got to go for it. And Terry Tao, of all people, with a juggernaut, with a quantum fucking computer for a brain, this guy has essentially thrown in the towel. He would rather just live the life of a normal human being. Now, on the surface, that's completely sane. But I'm just saying it's a shame. It's a shame. And I ranted the other day about giving 70% is just bullshit because that's hardly a passing grade. And then I ranted a couple of days later that, we should all relentlessly pursue okay because otherwise, whatever happened to all the fun in the world. But now I'm kind of like, we've gotten so lazy and spoiled. Not that I should talk, but most of our problems right now, political and cultural and societal, everyone is griping so much. If we could just shut the hell up and dedicate ourselves to whatever it is we want to dedicate ourselves to, I think 99% of our problems could be solved or at least mitigated. Instead, we're just hurling all of this bullshit at each other. And the challenges are really intractable. It's like when they laid down the Constitution and they created this government, you could literally go up to the White House and like talk to the secretary and chat with the prez. The country was small. The government, here's the thing, the government was small. The founding fathers had no idea that the government would become as big and bloated and regulated and bureaucratic as it's become. So when Musk was going through, the Doge chainsaw, a lot of reasonable people were like, this is overdue. Now, how it was done, both in terms of its recklessness and selectivity, that was fucked up. But the idea of just getting rid of most of the government, I love that idea. A lot of reasonable thinking people just want to gut it. Look at the FCC. I was just ranting about them. What is the point of the FCC? It's inhibited progress. Whether it was radio or television, I mean, just shut the fuck up. What are you doing? Why are you regulating businesses in media? I mean, you could argue as counterpoint that the internet's gotten out of control because of a lack of regulation, but I think the positive far outweighs the negative. So my point is, our government's too big. The federal government's too big. We try, and here I'm tying it together, folks. We try so hard to force people to do what they don't want to do. And I think people should just kind of do what they want to do and leave them alone. Even if their ideas and their thoughts are reprehensible to you. And if living near them or interacting with them feels violative in terms of your civil rights, then sorry. The country's pretty big. Move to a place where they love you. Be more flexible. You work in a factory, you lose your job. Learn a new skill. I know that sounds callous, but at the end of the day, who the fuck else is gonna bail you and your family out? Your town goes to hell because the manufacturing base has gone global. You got an uncle, lives in California. Go for it. Be more flexible. Try harder. Mind your own business. Appreciate what you have. Stop complaining. Stop blaming the other side for your problems. Go to a grocery store and walk around. Eat a sandwich. I know I'm sounding like a ranting old fool here, but seriously, the level of wealth that we have and the comfort, the flexibility that we have, and our system of government, this big bloated government, look what it's done for us. And you want to tear it down? You want to blow it up? You want civil war? With who? For what reason? Again, just live and let live and do what you love to do. And do a lot of it. And eat your jelly sandwich. And fuck the PTA meeting at UCLA. And be great with what you got. Thank you for listening. I just felt like this. I'm frustrated. I'm frustrated because everyone seems to be complaining and everyone seems to be blaming the other side of the aisle. And I see them both horrifically flawed, myopic, narcissistic, hedonistic in their own stupid and petty way. And from a historical and cultural perspective, we're doing so well as a country. And it's just exhausting.